another fun hat video. And if you've never worked with the extended single crochet stitch, we're going to be working with that today in a fun way. And this is a great project to learn the stitch in the round as well as make an easy hat. So today I will be using the Mary Maxim Mellow Spun DK weight yarn. This comes in a variety of colors and you can pick it up through the affiliate link in the pattern. I also made one with Madeline Tosh yarn just for fun to show that in different DK weight yarns, it works out quite well if you wanted to use something from your stash. Today you will be needing a 4.0 G hook and also a 4.5 hook. These are the dots hooks from We Crochet. I'm really enjoying them. I love the length and the metal on these. This is what I'll be using today. The 4.0 hook will be used for the ribbing, and then the 4.5 millimeter hook will be used for the body of the hat. You'll also want to have a stitch marker nearby to keep track of your rounds, as well as a tapestry needle to weave in the ends, and scissors. And then optional, if you like pom-poms on the top of your hat, you can have a pom-pom. This is a really simple project, so let's go ahead and get started. Now for the ribbing, I will be starting with my 4 millimeter hook, and we will be working up a band of ribbing. I want to show you where we're headed with this. I will be making the child size on camera, so I have worked 72 rows of ribbing to create this band. This is where we will start for any size of this hat. Is you're just starting creating that bottom ribbing in rows. It's quite simple to do. Just grab a movie and it works up fast. To get started making this ribbing, we are going to place a slip knot onto our hook. For this size, which is the child size, we will be chaining 21. After chaining 21, I like to tighten down that turning chain, and then we will be single crocheting into each chain across. So that will be a total of 20 stitches across. Now, after doing our first row, 20 stitches, we're going to go ahead and turn our work. You can start with a chain 1 and tighten that down. And now we will be working in the back loop only for every single stitch across. And to work in the back loop only, when we look at the top of our stitches, we see a V. This is the front loop that's closest to you, and the back loop is farthest away. So we will insert our hook through the back loop only and single crochet. And we're going to do that for each stitch across. So we will be single crocheting into that back loop only all the way across for 20 stitches for row 2. Now after working in the back loop only for those 20 stitches, we will be repeating row 2 until we get to a total of 72 rows for this child size. So I'll simply turn, chain 1 and tighten that chain down, and then single crochet into that back loop only for each stitch across. This is where it gets a bit fun and relaxing. Think of this as therapeutic and meditative. It does take a little bit of time to create ribbing at times because we are just doing the same thing over and over until we reach our bandwidth, but it's super fun to grab a movie and treat it like a treat to just make these bands. So once you're at 72 rows, then we can go ahead and join our band. I want to note that whenever you're counting rows, when it comes to ribbing, if you count one ridge, you'll notice we've got a section here. Each ridge is 2 rows. So it's easy to count them by 2 all the way across to quickly figure out where you are in your row count. So now that we have gone to 72 rows, it's time for us to join these edges. Now to join these edges together, this is my current row that I'm working on it now that I have 72 rows. And this was my first row. We are going to fold these in together, and then we will be slip stitching them together. So on my current row, I'm going to chain 1 to start this row and tighten it down. And then through that back loop only, I'm going to insert my crochet hook. Now here's where we're going to join the band together. You'll have your loop from the very first row. We're going to go ahead and also insert through that loop, and then we will yarn over and slip stitch everything together. Let's do that again. So I'll insert through the back loop only of my current row, and then I'm going to grab the next loop from my first row, yarn over and slip stitch those together. We will repeat that all the way down these stitches until they have all been joined. Now that we have joined the first and current edge together, we now have created a tube. So this is the brim of our hat. We'll be able to flip this up for that double brim for extra warmth. But for now, we're ready to continue on to the body of the hat, which the remaining of this is going to be worked in the round continuously. So grabbing your stitch marker is a great idea at this point. You'll be using it quite a bit. And then I'm also going to go ahead and switch hooks here. So I'm moving up from the 4mm hook to the 4.5mm hook. The next step we'll want to do is to slip stitch around one side of this brim, so the side that our yarn is on. You can go ahead and weave in this tail end if you want to just kind of get it out of the way, or just pull it down. At some point, you will need to weave that in. Now we will be doing one slip stitch per row all the way across. So I'm going to go ahead and do my first slip stitch, and then I'm going to mark it. Now the reason why I like to slip stitch around this brim before going into our stitch repeats is because I find it really makes a nice clean transition. So now I'm going to be doing one slip stitch per row. So basically on each side of the point is a great way to view that, to make sure you're doing the right amount of stitches. But I'm going to slip stitch one stitch per row, not too tight, all the way around. What this also means, since we're doing one stitch per row, is that our stitch count, once we get back to the end of our round, will also be 72 stitches. So go ahead and repeat those steps, just slip stitching one stitch per row all the way around. So now that we have worked our slip stitches all the way around one side of the brim, it's time for us to get started with our stitch pattern repeat. Now we've marked the very first stitch in the round, and for this round we will be working into the back loops only. We're going to leave those front loops alone because they make a nice line that makes it look really clean when we're starting to work a different stitch for the body of the hat. So I'm going to move my stitch marker. So this is the first stitch of the round, which we are actually going to be skipping. So we're going to skip one, and then we are going to work 2 extended single crochets into the next stitch in the back loop only. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to skip this first stitch, and then I'm going to go to the next stitch, and working through that back loop only, we will do 2 extended single crochet stitches. Now here's a tip just to make it a bit cleaner. We can just work this stitch in the back loop only and it looks fine. But if you want less of a gap between the bottom of the stitch and the hat, you can actually insert through that little extra fabric on the hat. So we're almost going right down the center of the stitch, but we're only grabbing that back loop, leaving that front loop there. And then this is how we will do the extended single crochet. So we've inserted our hooked into the stitch. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through one, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook. You will have a little bit of a gap here, but that tends to get resolved as we keep going. Now we're going to do that again into the same stitch. We'll insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 1 loop on the hook, then yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook. So that is our repeat around. It's to skip one and 2 extended single crochets into the next. So let's do that again. We're going to skip this stitch, go into the next stitch, and I like to catch some of the loops, the stitches on the main part of the ribbing. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, yarn over and pull through 1 loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then we'll do that again. Insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through one, then yarn over and pull through two. And now we've completed skipping one and doing two extended single crochets into the next stitch. So we will simply be repeating that all the way around, and our stitch count will still remain at 72 stitches because we are skipping one and then working two. So we're not actually adding or decreasing any stitches. It's just the pattern that we're making them in. So once again, that's skip the next, and then in the back loop only, work two extended single crochet stitches. And do that all the way around until you get to the beginning of the round. And it is always smart to mark the beginning of your round with a stitch marker. Now that we've worked all the way around, we're going to be doing that again, but I want to show you how to work it into this extended single crochet stitches that are already there. So we have our first stitch marked. We're going to go ahead and move our stitch marker, and we're going to repeat what we just did around and around. So we're going to skip the first stitch, and in the second stitch, create two extended single crochet stitches. And then go ahead and mark that first stitch right now before we forget. And that way we know the beginning of our round. Then we will skip the next stitch and do two extended single crochets into the next. And that's our repeat around and around. Skip a stitch and two extended single crochets into the next. So this is a really fun and easy body part to work up for this because we're just doing a skip stitch and two extended single crochets, and it works out quite quickly. We also notice that the height of an extended single crochet is higher than your regular single crochet stitch, so it also works out quickly because of that. Now for each size, we'll do a different amount of repeats depending on the size it is. But for this child size, we will do a total of 11 rounds from the brim, and then come on back and we'll do some decreasing. So once we have the height of our hat pattern, it's time for us to start decreasing, and the method will be the same for each size. The stitch counts will just be different. So for this round, for this size, we're taking it from 72 stitches down to 60 stitches by the way that we're doing the decreasing. So for this decreasing pattern, we will start by doing an extended single crochet two together. To do this for the first stitch, we're going to enter our hook into the first stitch of the round, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through one, and then insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through one, and then we will yarn over and pull through all three loops on the hook to finish out that extended single crochet two together. I'm going to place my stitch marker at the first stitch of the round. Now the next steps in our repeat will be to do skip the next stitch and do your two extended single crochet stitches into the next. So kind of the pattern we've been doing before. And then we're going to do that again. And that's going to be our decrease repeat around. So I'm going to go over that one more time. So we'll start by doing into the next two stitches. We're not skipping any here. We're going to do an extended single crochet two together. And then we're going to skip one and do two extended single crochets in the next. And we'll be doing that step twice. So I'm going to skip one again and do two extended single crochets. And that is our repeat around for the first decreasing round. So after we've done the first round of decreasing, we're ready for round two of decreasing. I'm going to move my stitch marker, and we're going to start by just doing an extended single crochet into the first stitch and mark it. And then for the next two stitches in this round, we are going to be doing an extended single crochet two together. And then we are going to skip one and do two extended single crochets into the next. And that's going to be our repeat around. So I want to show you that one more time. We're simply going to do one extended single crochet into the next stitch. And then we'll do an extended single crochet 2 together across the next 2 stitches. And then we will skip one and do 2 extended single crochets into the next. And for this round, for the size that we are working, it will decrease it down to a total of 48 stitches. So repeat that around and come on back. And now for round 3, decreasing of this hat, we're going to move that stitch marker and we're going to start this round with an extended single crochet 2 together. So we're going to insert into the first, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 1, and then the next doing the same, and then yarn over and pull through 3. We've done that extended single crochet decrease for that very first stitch, and then we're going to skip 1 and do 2 extended single crochets into the next stitch. And that's going to be our repeat around. So we're going to do an extended single crochet decrease, and then skip 1 and do 2 extended single crochets into the next, and we'll work that all the way around. And for this size, at the end of this round, we will have a total of 36 stitches, and then come back for round 4 decreasing. Now I want to interrupt our decreasing for just a moment and talk about a tip. Sometimes when we're doing decreases, we find that it might look in certain areas a little bit like gappy, I guess you could say. And this is a mistake I made back here, which I will maybe or maybe not fix, because sometimes 1 or 2 isn't a big deal. But the reason why you might find yours might be looking different than mine is based on tension. If we look at the top of these stitches, the ones that are a bit longer than the ones over here tend to be where we find we have those gaps, and less over here than here. So here's how we prevent that. When we are working our stitches, I just did a decrease, and now I'm going to skip 1 and do 2 extended single crochets into the next. If we keep our yarn tight through this right here before starting our next stitch, that is what will help prevent that gap. So I'm going to start my next stitch, and notice I'm really pulling this over here so that it doesn't allow it to stretch out and be long. Then I'll yarn over and pull up a loop and finish that extended single crochet. And notice the top of this stitch is much shorter than the stitch I kind of messed up on over here. And that's what keeps it, this area, being a little bit less gappy than other areas. So it's all about that. When you're moving that hook from stitch to stitch, you're keeping this a little bit tighter on the hook before starting your next stitch. So here's a decrease. And now I'm okay. So my yarn over here is kind of being held by this next stitch. So I'm not going to keep it so tight, but that original loop is staying a bit tighter as I finish that stitch. And that way we have less gappage. So it's all about that tension there when we're working those stitches, so that we have it a nice, tight, clean look happening. It's the tension between each set of stitches. So now we're ready to go on to round 4 of decreasing. We're going to start by doing an extended single crochet into our first stitch and then marking it. And then we are going to extended single crochet decrease over the next 2. And that's our repeat around. So we'll simply do an extended single crochet stitch for 1, and then decrease over the next 2. And notice as we get back to here, I just want you to notice how this has a lot more air in it, a lot than the rest, because this is where I didn't pay attention to my tension on this one and I kind of messed up. Now I'm not too worried about it because as I do some decreasing here, it'll pull it in. But if I were to do it for every stitch, it wouldn't look as good. And honestly, that gap is still there. So as if it bugs you or not, notice I don't really have that on the rest because I kept my tension nice and tight in between working the stitches from one stitch to the next. So for this round, we're going to do an extended single crochet for 1, extended single crochet decrease, and work that all the way around. And then at the end of round 4 for this size, we will have 24 stitches at the end of this round. So now on to round 5, and this is where we are simply going to be working extended single crochet decreases all the way around. So we're going to do an extended single crochet 2 together, and we're going to do that all the way around, and that will decrease for this size from 24 stitches to 12. So I'm just going to do that all the way around, doing those extended single crochet decreases, and then I'll come back. Now for the last round, we are simply going to do an extended single crochet into each stitch around. The reason why is we still got a pretty large hole here. You can stop and pull it together, but it will look a little bit more bunched. The other option is, depending on what size you're making, if you want to, you can do another round of decreasing. So you can do the extended single crochet two together all the way around again if you want to, or you can simply do an extended single crochet into each stitch around, and that just helps minimize the hole at the top before we finish off. So go ahead and do this round and then come on back. So now after finishing this last round, we can go ahead and fasten off our yarn and then grab our tapestry needle, and we can use this end to weave in the top of the hat. So we still have a hole in the top of the hat, and we're going to go ahead and fix that right now. What I like to do is I like to weave through the front loop only of each stitch around. So for this size, I have 12 stitches, and I'm just going to weave through that front loop only all the way around. Now, once you've woven through all the loops, you can go ahead and pull that close. That closes really nicely. Sometimes with many different hats, I do find on the row below, sometimes we get a little bit of an extra gap. So what we can do is we can weave through a few more stitches here, and then we can go down a row, just kind of weaving your needle, and we can close that a bit by just weaving through some stitches on that row and kind of gently pulling them together as we did for the other hole. And that will help diminish some of that gapping that we might see on the row below. But if you are using a pom-pom, this will also not be noticeable. So if you would like at this time, you can go ahead and attach a pom-pom to the top of the hat and weave in all of your ends. All right, now I want to take a moment before we end this video today, and I want to talk about something else because this is a common question we get as designers. And that is, hey, I found this yarn in my stash. I think it will work. Can I use this yarn instead? Well, here's a fun thing. I happened to be at Joann's with Michelle and Hannah. They were in person here, which is so much fun. They're doing a fun crochet along with me with these hats. And we saw this Red Heart Super Saver brushed. We thought it was really pretty with this brushed fuzzy yarn and thought it would make a great hat. And as we were looking at it, we were like, oh, you know, they have all this brushed fuzzy stuff. Could this be like the yarn we had used? Could this be like the DK yarn we had used? Turns out it is not. It actually is gauging much larger than the original yarn you saw in this pattern. But that's okay because this gives us the opportunity to talk about something else, and that is, how do I substitute yarns? Now, I've got a great blog post on what is gauge and how to fix it, because gauge is really important, and that's what comes to sizing. But for this pattern, if I were to match the gauge by messing around with my crochet hook, this would become too tight. Like, it really would not work. The brim would be so stiff, the hat would be so stiff, the drape would be awful. That is not something we would want to do. So here's an alternative, and this does not work for every pattern. I just want to be clear. For a lot of patterns, it would involve a complete redesign of stitches. We wouldn't want to be doing as many stitches. We would be doing a different gauge. But for this, because it's such a simple repeat hat, we thought we would tell you how to maybe grab some yarn for your stash if you really wanted to make it work, what your options are. So what I did is I stayed with the same hook. Yes, this is slightly stiffer than my other one, but I don't mind it. It's still stretchy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this band, the first band of this ribbing, to be the width I want here. And then the length of it, I'm just going to work it until I'm about to the length that is in the measurements. So I'm not going by how many rows I'm doing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tape measure, because this will be different than the original one in terms of how many rows we have. And I'm just simply going to do my ribbing until it is what I need for whatever size I need in measurement versus rows. And once I have that, because the decreases start in a multiple of 6 stitches, I'm just going to make sure my ribbing is in a multiple of 6 rows, and then the rest would work out. So while the stitch count will be different, I'm simply going to do the band to be the size I want with my tape measure. And then I'm going to work in multiples of 6. So I'm going to make sure this band in the end is close to my measurement and in multiples of 6. And then I'm just going to work the pattern as is. And that's what's going to make it feel better, look better, be better without an entire remake. Now, can I do this for every single pattern? Not exactly. It really depends on what pattern you're doing. But with these simple stitch repeat style patterns, this is a possibility. And this is the way you would work it to see it come out a bit better without a complete redesign. So if you want to try a different yarn, feel free, ask questions in the community group, and we'll be right there to help you. I hope you really enjoyed this hat pattern. It's really a fun, simplistic one, and you can go ahead and place pom-poms on the top if you want. Double pom-poms for the babies is always really cute if you want to do that. And the double brim is really warm. I did test it out at Disney with my friends, and it was a cold night, shockingly, and I was so grateful that I had a nice, cozy, warm hat with me. And this is really a fun, easy stitch repeat, so it works out great and is great for gifts as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back for some more fun tutorials soon.